I said, got a lot of different titles. He's a former FBI special agent, former chief of police, former corrections director, former senator, currently teaching over at the University of Guam. And thank you for joining us. I don't even know how to call you chief. I'll just call you chief. We'll just go with that. Good morning.
Frank, good morning. Thank you for inviting.
Frank, that'll work. Let's just get right into it then. I was wondering, just given your background as a former FBI agent, when we have these things that are happening in both the former mayor, Jesse Blas's trial, and then more recently in the Mark Mayo drug trial, when the FBI plays pieces of interrogations and they do things like they drop the same names over and over, it kind of seems like outside looking in, like it's part of some grand plan to maybe give so-and-so like, hey, here's a heads up. We know what you're kind of looking at you, or, hey, everybody, this is what we know. This is what we're working on. Is that really what it is, or are we just kind of like reading too much into it?
I don't know. I think it'd be nice if you could get an interview with maybe the prosecutor, Sambatoro, or the agent. It's hard to read because there are all kinds of possibilities. So regarding, I tuned into that trial. That was for, I tuned in a little bit of the mayor's sentencing, but it got kind of long.
Yeah.
And then I tuned in for Mr. Mayo's trial because it was the first time we've had a trial in a long time, and it was available on Zoom. And for my students, ideal. Because it's ideal for a teaching platform.
Right.
So that's what I used it for. And so anyway, when you get down to it, it's hard to tell what the strategy was, and certainly the priority for any prosecutor would be to enter enough evidence to get the conviction, right? And was that also going to overlap into something else? So it was interesting to hear it. It's too bad we couldn't record it,
right?
Or otherwise we'll get in trouble. And I know Troy got in trouble for posting it on Facebook or something. So. So the first and foremost, doing a trial, I think a prosecutor wants to present the best case to get the intended result, which is get a conviction, and she needed that. She wanted to use that for proving a case. But what are the other possibilities? I don't know. There could be.
It kind of just seems like if they drop the same names over and over that they're kind of, I don't know. Are we supposed to take the hint or what?
Well, it could be. I'll just offer this. The charges, a couple of charges, right? One, the main charge was just possession with intent to distribute, but the other one is conspiracy. And when you hear how do you prove a conspiracy? So you would have to, explain a whole group of people, because you need at least two people, right?
Yeah.
You need to explain the extent of the conspiracy, and the players, all the players were, most of them are convicted already, and they're cooperating. So I think it was useful for proving the extent of that conspiracy. And in your minds, you're thinking other conspiracies. So go ahead. I want to hear your theory.
Now you first. Frank, so you said your students were able to kind of observe a little bit on this Mayo trial. What were some of the takeaways that your students had?
Well, for different classes I teach, it's I talk about investigations. I talk about what evidence you need to get probable cause, which is a constitutional standard. It's a Fourth Amendment standard, right? Before you search or arrest somebody, you need to meet that standard, which is probable cause. So you gotta, showing that is important. And then the prosecutor needs to show at least probable cause. Actually, prosecutor needs more than probable cause, but the minimum is to have probable cause so you can charge somebody in court. That's the minimum standard. And then, so for my students, it was very, very useful to see the process, see how evidence is used, and the process of a trial. You follow, and the actual trial itself. And so the Zoom link to federal court is exceptional. It's a great platform for learning. And I wish that Superior Court would do the same thing, put everything on Zoom.
Is this criminal justice students?
Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love to have you chat with him from your perspective on criminal justice.
Okay.
How about that? I can invite you on Zoom as well.
Yeah, Sabrina was in the FBI Citizens Academy. I don't know why I'm not interviewing her.
So the students are criminal justice students. A lot of them are they studying, or they want to be law enforcement officers or attorneys?
Yeah, it's a mix of students. Some people are just lost trying to find themselves, I think.
Yeah.
So I always find future attorneys, future criminal justice professionals. It could be cops or agents or some other things. I mean, who knows where people are going to end up?
Mm-hmm.
You follow? I mean,
Yeah.
as we out through college, we think we want to do something, and then we end up doing something totally different, right? So that's life.
Right. So when they played and when they listened to the interrogation, when they played back FBI agent Fernandez's Rafael's audio and the interview with Mayo, and they were talking about all these allegations, or dropping some names, and do you know any dirty cops, etc. What was their reaction to that portion of the trial?
Well, it was an awe. It's hard to judge their reactions because it's a learning platform, you see, and so I throw everything at them, and then I use those recollections of the trial for discussions. And as we go through the semester, I want them to explore, and we want to have good discussions on what was going on, what was the reason, what was the intent, and I can certainly show what the prosecutor was trying to show as the evidence is introduced, the witnesses are brought before them, and the defense counsel does cross-examination. Those are all very, very great learning platforms.
So did you guys have any discussions? Did you have any discussions with your students about these allegations?
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. You got two stories, right? The Mayor story, which took a long time to unfold. And then Mr. Mayo was just one of many defendants. But the interesting part about it is the whole process, the investigative process.
Yeah.
So when an agent interviews somebody who's been arrested, you want a truthful interview. You follow? You don't want to be confrontational because they can assert their rights, for instance, which you can terminate an interview. But you want to explore how much they want to talk. And I think that was reflected in Agent Fernandez's interview. I think it was a very well done interview because you want to get the facts of the case. That's one. You always want to establish the facts of the case because he's working there with a postal inspector, right? But you also want to fish. You follow? So the rest of it was a fishing expedition. So what kind of bait, what kind of fish is out there? So I mean that's what you would do. And then it was interesting. I tell people about interviewing by talking in circles. Talking in circles is like going all over the world, and so that the person you're interviewing doesn't know what you're really looking for. And I call it talking in circles. Okay. And when somebody talks to me like that, I would say, "Hey, get to the point," But I know what he's doing, so I think he did a great job. Great interview, good example, and I would love to get a copy of that interview for learning purposes. And that should be available because it was used as evidence, but you couldn't record it,
Right, yeah.
without getting in trouble with the judge.
Mm-hmm. So FBI, great interview, but they played it, in this trial, an interview from, 2 years ago, and you said this whole fishing thing, but because they played it...
Yeah, I call it a fishing thing.
Okay, they were fishing when they were, whatever you want to call it, fishing when they were doing this interview, but they played it during this trial where everybody and all the journalists could hear it, and they write their stories. And I mean, for them to say, the mayor, he was already convicted, then you have Joey Talahi, and there's been no charges against him. But by the mere act of them playing this, is this an indication, in your opinion, that he might be something might be happening with him, that we could see charges coming down against Mr. Talahi?
Well, it's always possible. It's always possible. Here's the deal, right? For for the bulk of the cases that are being worked on, there's a 5-year statute of limitations. So I think there's always a clock. When is the clock going to run out? And I think they're probably getting close to that because whatever facts they have, whenever the crimes are committed. So you're probably looking at maybe 3 years already into it. Mm-hmm. And so if they're going to do anything else, they probably need more evidence. Okay, they kind of, you see smoke, but maybe there's not enough fire.
A lot of smoke.
With the smoke, there's fire, right? But how much fire is there? Because you need the fire to prove your case. You follow? So you need to meet the standard for arresting. You need to meet the standard for conviction. But you also want to have enough fire so that you can get a successful conviction. So I'm guessing maybe there's not enough fire to prove a case sufficiently, and so they maybe this was a last chance. But I don't know. I don't know because you got to go first mission for any trial is to get the conviction and to show sufficient evidence, and make it sexy maybe. And I don't know. I don't know what the intentions were. If I was in that playing field, I would know what the game plan was. I don't know. I can only speculate.
Right.
And one of the tools can be to kind of lay out as much, because normally you cannot release that information. You follow?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
The only opportunity for releasing that information, for using that information would be during a trial, because you want to use that evidence to prove a particular aspect of a case. And they probably needed that more for, there are a couple of things she wanted to prove, right? Going back to the Mayo trial. One was that he knew that was meth. And I was listening to Roland Montanone did a great job of defending. I think he did the best he could. I think the evidence was too powerful, but he raised enough challenges in his arguments, in his cross-examinations, that I think it required the government to make sure there's a solid prosecutable case for possession with intent, which means you got to prove you knew what was in the container, right? What was in the package. And then to prove conspiracy, you got to show that you're part of a group that's involved in that conspiracy of committing crime against conspiracy to import and distribute drugs or something. I forgot what the exact charges were.
When talking about the speculating and throwing things out there and fishing and whatnot, there's that side of it. But I think more importantly, the biggest impact all of these revelations have is the further eroding of the public trust and confidence in these institutions like the police department, the court, that are just customs that are supposed to just kind of be, I mean, for all intents and purposes, above reproach, right? So when we have the feds just constantly throwing mud on the wall, I mean, it just doesn't really translate well out here in the public. And now we have, I mean, it's a pretty normal conversation to talk about corrupt cops. I mean, drugs coming in. I mean, the meth is just so bad on Guam. And then to hear that the feds think, a lot of our law enforcement are involved with it, it's pretty alarming.
Well, I think there was enough smoke to be concerned about it. And historically, and I've worked with people in the past that ended up going into the dark side. And so there's always a possibility. It's like, what is the tentacion, right? What is drawing you? Why do you do that? So people get involved in maybe too many girlfriends, or they like to gamble, they need money. And when they work extra hard and they get overtime, it's like, wow, but maybe the habit is greater than what they can actually earn. So the potential for corruption is always there. And that's why you look at why the recruitment standards so high for like the police and the judges like that. If all the standards are very high, and that's why for the judge you have confirmation hearing, but it's hard to hear the details until years later, and we have a retention vote for judges. But for police or customs officer or corrections officer, those three now require, like polygraph exam and a whole screening process to be hired. So I see a good and a bad, right? I'm going to give you the good and the bad. The good is, okay, so you're screening, but the risk is down the road. You follow? What are we going to do to periodically check? So in federal service, for instance, there's a periodic renewal of your background investigation, like every 7 years, and they would do maybe credit checks. I think credit checks are good. I think everybody that runs for office, they should authorize a credit check. Are you spending more? Are you acquiring more wealth than you should? You follow? So if you look at when you run for office, you submit your financial disclosures, right? And if you're on a certain like elected officials and appointed officials, get the public disclosures every year. You follow the financial disclosure? How do we know those are truthful? You follow? How do we know?
Yeah.
Should we do a little more? But if you do a little more, what is it going to cost to do a little more? Uncle Sam spends, I'm guessing maybe $10,000 or so per background investigation. So there's extra cost. Can we afford it? Is that where we want to go? But if you're worried about corruption, you may have to do a couple extra things. And then in our culture society, we may know something, but we're not going to say anything because we don't want to offend. We see these people in church. We're paris, compadres with them. Went to school with them. You follow? Yeah. We're such a small that the potential for ignoring things is greater.
Yeah. So
how do we fix that?
Yeah. Do you think the drug dealers thrive on that culture, Chief?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if the drug dealers across the board thrive on that culture, but they know the rules of society, right? We know how to get away with things, but I think we're less tolerant. I think we're definitely less tolerant about drug dealers. I think we are, but when we talk about corruption, what is the level of corruption? Is it a mild thing or is it a heavy thing? And you can be compromised for a little thing, and then next thing you're gonna keep doing it, right? The potential is always there. So we talk about ethics in government and having regular ethical training. Well, ethics training is good, but ethics is a guide, right? And if you do more than violate the ethics, then you're probably going to be committing crimes. Do we have the capacity to investigate those? Are we willing to investigate that? There's a cost. We're just worried about feeding people right now.
Right. So having said all that, and just reading through this letter from the Oversight Chair of Public Safety, Senator Peter Terlahi, to the Police Department, requesting Chief Ignacio to launch this multi-agency internal affairs investigation into all of these allegations, to include what came out in the Mayo trial. Really, is this just all much ado about nothing? I mean, that's great. You wrote a letter. We really, is he really going to be able to find out anything? In your opinion?
Yeah, I don't know that. I love Peter Terlahi, and certainly I have all the trust and confidence in Chief Steve Ignacio. For one thing, but one thing is, does Steve have the authority to do internal affairs investigations for all these other agencies? No, he doesn't. Are there limits and time limits in internal affairs investigation? Yes, there is. So I think Peter should rethink what he said. Attorney General's office can do criminal investigations, and then some years ago, was it Joe McDonald, when he was chief prosecutor? He had a good link with the FBI, and I don't know why he decided to go back to private practice, but we all get frustrated in government, right? So I thought he was going in the right direction, and then he decided to call it. He threw in this. He decided to go make more money in private sector, which nothing wrong with that, but I thought he had a good moral compass to go. I think the Attorney General's office is the only agency that really has the authority to do this broad-based investigation, but it's only for criminal investigation. I know that Lieutenant Governor wanted to re-implement the Police Review Commission, and I think he's trying to do something with that. But the old Police Review Commission really was only targeting police. So I kind of recommended that maybe you should revisit that and structure it for all criminal justice, not just the police.
Yeah.
You know what? We're picking up police forever, but there could be leaks everywhere. On the other side of the coin, I'm going to say, by and large, we got a great bunch of professionals who are criminal justice professionals, and they're doing the right thing. But the few people who go do other things, we worry about those people. The potential for getting in trouble is always there. Yeah. It's always there. Yeah. And I can go back to when I was back in the 70s. I had these two great detectives that I trusted. Absolutely trusted. And one day they did a good heroin car stop, and they had good informant coverage, and they had great cash, good amount of heroin, and I'm in court. That's the old Superior Court, testify for trial, and I get called. It's just the other end of the street. It was that access road from San Ramon Hill to the court. Yeah. It was just there at that intersection. So I just walked over, and this is huge nail-laid capsules of heroin and cash, a nice Corvette. And I thought, wow, you guys did great. So I asked one, and I was running a crime lab, so I asked my lead guy, I go, hey, why don't you do this as quickly as you can, because this is a big case. And so by the time I got back to the crime lab, which was the current corrections facility in Agania, we had the back side of it, the old building, and he had done a complete analysis. And then I realized that something was missing. So I called the investigators. Hey, I said, maybe you want to re-examine your evidence, because I said, there's a little problem, but I'm sure you can fix it. And so they came over the next day, and then they did what they had to do to make sure they marked the evidence and stuff like that. And then another day goes by, and I get summoned by the director of public safety, because we used to be a public safety department. It was Greg Paris. He goes, close the door and sit down. I go, oh my God, he's going to give me a lecture. And Director Paris goes, you lucky dog. I go, yes, sir. What, sir? So he said, those two guys were going to rip off the heroin, but they couldn't, because your people already dumped the heroin out, did a complete analysis, and the containers were in a different package, so they couldn't switch it. But they came to switch the capsules with duds, because they got compromised by the trafficker. Wow. You follow? Yeah. Anyway, these two guys were good quality investigators, very skilled investigators. They knew, they're detectives, they did drug cases, they did all kinds of cases. They solved homicide cases. I trusted them because I worked with them for a few years, and they produced, you follow? And now they went bad. And I go, why? You know what I mean? That was just a sign. I go, wow. So even the people you think are really skilled and good can go bad. And so how do we ensure our criminal justice system and the public that we have honest, ethical people working for them? How do we do that?
I know that was a rhetorical question, because we don't got no answers here. But Chief, I will say, going back to what you said about the culture and how we just don't say anything. I mean, I know a lot of cops, and all the cops know what cops to not say anything around, because those cops are, parties with so-and-so who's a big dealer, or, or they're close with so-and-so, or, they ride around with so-and-so off the clock. You know what I mean? So I think it's interesting that we see these problems, but because we don't say anything about them, what ends up happening is we try to work around. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You have to work around, because you don't know who's what, and it's a standard practice. I've worked in different cities and across different, even outside the United States, and to be effective at your job, you need to have a trusting relationship with people you work for and with. But you also know that there's a potential for leaks, and the leaks can create problems. Sometimes it's a simple thing like calling the media, maybe, but not as bad as if they compromise an investigation to the target. So so the risk is always there. So the common practice is to keep your groups small and not share too much information outside that group.
Right. Compartmentalization. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's common practice.
Right on.
Yeah.
Well, Chief, anything in closing before we let you go? I'm glad you're getting some teaching mileage out of all this stuff. Have anything?
Well, I want to have access. I want to have access to this recording. So is this on
Yeah, I'll send you the link.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Got it.
And I love what you folks are doing. And you should harass Joe Carbolino is logged in.
Yeah, he is. Yeah. Yeah, we are. That's exactly why he's here. Yeah. He's here for his 9:30 harassing.
Listen, I love Joe. I think he's doing a super job at corrections. And I'm sorry I couldn't stay very long. So my second run at corrections it lasted 2 months, and you
had us going there. You had us going there, Chief.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, this guy's talking some good stuff. Wait, where'd he go?
Turned around, he was gone.
Yeah.
He was the only person I shared this with that I had to go. And I, I know Governor wasn't happy, but I said, at my age, I can't continue to do this. And I said, I'm not sleeping well at night, and my blood pressure shot up too high. And I said, no, it's not wise for me to continue. So I hope Joe's blood pressure is good.
Yeah, that's the first question. Okay, Chief. Thank you, Chief.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
We'll send you the link.
Hey, Chief.
And Joe, I need for you to talk to a class.
Yeah, no problem. I'll do it.
I'll send you his number.
Promising you to
Okay.
go on, so no worries.
All right.
That's okay. 9:37. Guys, we're just going to take a really quick break, and we're coming back with